What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, yesterday the NFL officially announced that the deadline for opting out of the 2020 NFL season is tomorrow, Thursday, April the 6th. Now, thus far in the offseason, the Detroit Lions have had pretty good luck as far as players opting out. We've had two guys opt out so far, and that's John Adkins and Geronimo Allison, neither of which were going to be a starter. I believe both of them were going to have a role on this team, but they weren't going to be huge impact players. They weren't going to, be the starter for any game at any point barring injuries. And thus far we've been very, very lucky. We're not like the Patriots who have lost 8 players including several defensive starters. We're not the Broncos who just lost our starting left tackle. Like, the Detroit Lions have been fairly lucky this far, but just because they have been this far doesn't mean that it is doesn't mean that players can't opt out. Obviously, they still have till Thursday, and there are plenty of NFL players that are going to opt out between when this video goes out and when the deadline is, and some of them could be Detroit Lions. And, even though we can afford to lose guys like Geronimo Allison and John Adkins, there are guys on this roster that we absolutely cannot afford to opt out for the 2020 season, and those are the guys that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the guys that, if they opt out for this season, if they talk with their families and they decide, it's just not worth playing this season, we can pretty much scrap the season right now, because without these guys, the Detroit Lions aren't going to be successful. So before we do get into talking about these 5 players, though, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying the content, consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes 2 seconds out of your day to make mine, and I'd be very, very appreciative to everybody that chooses to do so. And while you're at it, go down in the description, go to my second channel, Right or Wrong Productions. I think I'm going to start transitioning and doing a little bit more Lions highlights, highlighting players, highlighting the team as a whole, and, more stuff like that. So it's going to be more Lions-related content from now on. So if you're interested in the Lion highlight videos, I would suggest go over and subscribe to that channel. But with that being said, let's get in and talk about the 5 players the Detroit Lions cannot afford to opt out in the 2020 season. Now, this list is in no particular order. Obviously, I will say whether the player is, if it would be a bigger impact or a smaller impact, but I did not rank them like most impactful to least impactful, because all of these guys are going to have huge impacts this season, and all of these guys, would pretty much devastate the season if they were to opt out. Now, the first player is Matthew Stafford. Now, obviously, if any franchise quarterback opts out for this season, their team's pretty much done. But the Detroit Lions are in a special case where, they're probably not going to win a game. We've seen the Steelers, they lost Ben Roethlisberger last year, and they were down to their third string quarterback in Doug Hodges, and they still went 8-8. We've seen the Jaguars, they lost their starting quarterback, and they still had a solid season. They still won some games with their backup. The Detroit Lions did not do that last year. The Detroit Lions lost Matthew Stafford for half the season, and neither our backup or our third string quarterback could put together a good enough game to win us a football game. Now, that's bad, and I don't think necessarily it's 100% their fault, but at the same time, Matthew Stafford was winning football games with that exact same roster. So, the quarterback play definitely dropped, and to show just how drastically it dropped, when Matthew Stafford was playing in the first 8 games, the Detroit Lions averaged 25.5 points per game, and they averaged 391 total yards per game, and they had a 3-4-1 record. After Matthew Stafford got hurt after the Oakland Raiders game, the Detroit Lions production dropped to 17.1 points per game and 302 yards per game. So the Detroit Lions had almost 7 less punts. They were averaging almost a touchdown less per game, and they were averaging almost 100 yards less. Like, the offensive production dipped so much without our leader in Matthew Stafford, and that's to be expected when you lose your franchise quarterback. But if Matthew Stafford decides to opt out for this season for any reason, the Detroit Lions can pretty much scrap the season, and they can pretty much expect to have the number 1 overall pick, because without Matthew Stafford, this roster has not proven they can win ever. Since Matthew Stafford was drafted, since Matthew Stafford was drafted in the 2009 NFL draft, the Detroit Lions are 5-23 without him. In the past decade, they are 5-23 without Matthew Stafford, including an 0-8 season including 0-8 last year, and early in his career when he got hurt, they only won 5 games in those couple years. So the Detroit Lions organization has not been good enough to, win without Matthew Stafford, and that is still the case. The Detroit Lions, I think they improved this year, but they did not improve enough to win a significant amount of games, if any, if Matthew Stafford decides to opt out. And he is by far the most important player to this franchise, and if he were to opt out, it would be the biggest impact, out of everybody on this list. Moving on to our second player, I said Frank Ragnow. Now, Frank Ragnow is obviously the center. He's the centerpiece of that offensive line. He's the best offensive lineman on the team right now, and if he decides to opt out, our offensive line looks really bad. Right now, we can be certain about two positions, really. And we can be certain that Taylor Decker is going to be at left guard, and that Frank Ragnow is going to be the center, obviously, unless they opt out. If they're playing, we know those two guys are going to be there. But we don't really know the guard positions. And, we can say Big V is going to start at right tackle, but we don't know for sure. He could always move into guard or something like that. So, removing not only our best offensive lineman, but one of the only two that we know is going to be a starter is going to be a huge hit to that offensive line, because he's pretty much the captain. He's at the center of that. He's calling out he's calling out everything to the offensive line. He's in charge of the communication to the line. And, NFL teams, they don't do well without a good center. And if Frank Ragnow decides to opt out, if he decides that the season's not worth it, our offensive line is going to take a huge hit. And Matthew Stafford is going to take a lot of huge hits, and he's probably going to get injured again. Our offensive line was graded fairly high last year by a lot of people, and, he still got injured. Matthew Stafford still broke his back. So could you imagine it if we, after losing Graham Glasgow, after losing Rick Wagner, and then Frank Ragnow opts out? That's three starters from last year that's not even there anymore. The left guard positions is always a question mark. It was like that last year. And then Taylor Decker, he's a solid tackle, but he can't protect all five positions at the same time. He can't play all five offensive line positions. So yeah, the left tackle is going to be all right, but then you have four other guys on the defensive line getting right through because we're playing with new guys, rookies, or backups. So if Frank Ragnow opts out, the offensive line's going to take a huge hit. Matthew Stafford's going to take a lot of huge hits, and Stafford's going to get injured. And then when you lose your starting center and your starting quarterback, you can't win football games. It's almost impossible at that point. Moving on to the third player, I said Danny Shelton. Now, Danny Shelton is a free agent acquisition from the New England Patriots, and he played very, very well for them last year. He was a key part of their defensive line and a key part of that number one defense. Now, the Detroit Lions organization in the Matt Patricia era and before even that, they play their best football when they have an elite defensive tackle, dating back to Ndamukong Suh, when Snacks Harrison was playing at an elite level. And even before that, when they have an elite defensive tackle that commands double teams, can get off blocks, can get pressures, can get tackles for loss, they have a great defense. And, last year, even with Snacks Harrison, he wasn't playing. Well, Snacks his production dropped. He didn't want to be here. We brought in Mike Daniels. He didn't play very well. He didn't play very much. And, the defensive line was bad. And in turn, the rest of the defense was bad because our defensive line wasn't getting pressure. They weren't stopping the run very well. And then, when your defensive line's getting beat, then your linebackers start getting beat. And then when the linebackers start getting beat, that's when the secondary starts getting beat and getting picked on a lot. And that, I think, a big reason the defense was so bad last year is because of Snacks' regret. So in steps Danny Shelton, the new defensive tackle we got in free agency. Now, Danny Shelton, as I said, was a huge part of that defensive line in New England, and he's going to play the exact same role here in Detroit. I think he's going to play so much better than what Snacks did last year, and it's not very hard to do. Snacks did not play very well last year, and Danny Shelton, it's pretty much a guarantee that he is going to outperform Snacks Harrison if he does play. Now, not only does the defense play better as a whole, but certain players play better. Like Jared Davis, when Snacks Harrison was playing great in 2018, Jared Davis looked like a first-round linebacker. Snacks was opening up holes, so Jared Davis had a free shot at the running back. He had a free shot at the quarterback, and I think he had 6 sacks when Snacks Harrison was playing great. And then Snacks started playing bad again, and his sack production dropped to only 2. He wasn't getting those free shots at the line or at the running backs. He wasn't getting the same opportunity, and he looked significantly worse. Same with the rest of our defensive line, right? When Snacks was playing great, Romeo Okwara got 7.5 sacks and looked like a great pass rusher. Snacks started playing horrible, and we brought in Trey Flowers, but then even Trey Flowers only got 7 sacks. You're not going to tell me that Trey Flowers is less talented than Romeo Okwara. He just didn't have the supporting cast. He didn't have this people playing at the same level as Romeo Okwara did, and if Trey Flowers has a guy like that playing at a Snacks level, playing at a 2018 Snacks level, commanding double teams in the middle, clogging up the running lanes. Trey Flowers is going to get double-digit sacks because he's more talented than Romeo Okwara is. And if Romeo Okwara can get 7.5 sacks with that kind of defensive tackle play, I can't even imagine what Trey Flowers is going to do with that kind of defensive tackle play. And I think he's going to get that kind of play out of Danny Shelton this year. And then the last thing is, if Danny Shelton gets hurt, we don't have a lot of depth behind him that can do what Danny Shelton does. We brought in Dalen Mack, who's a 5th-round pick. We have John Pennicini and Jay Sean Cornell, who are late-round picks. We have Kevin Strong and Nick Williams. Nick Williams is not a run stopper. Kevin Strong is a depth player at best. If he gets hurt, our defensive tackle, we don't have anybody left, and it's going to look a lot like last year's defense because we're not going to be able to stop the run, and we're not going to be able to push the pocket and get interior pressure. So Danny Shelton, is the most important player on the defense right now. He's not going to be the flashiest. He's not going to be, the guy putting up all the stats, but he is the most important guy on this defense right now. And if he opts out, our defense is going to be atrocious once again. Moving on to the 4th player, I said Tracy Walker. Now, we all saw how the defense regressed. They were playing okay. They weren't playing great, but they were playing serviceable. They were playing good enough to win football games in the first couple weeks. Then we traded Quandre Diggs. And then, after we traded that veteran safety, our production and our defense absolutely took a massive hit, and we dropped from a bad defense to the worst defense. Now, we brought in a replacement. We brought in a guy in Duron Harmon to add another safety, and then I think he's going to play free safety, and I think Tracy's going to move over to that where Quandre Diggs was in the strong safety position. But if Tracy Walker decides to opt out, we're going to be in that same situation again as last year. We're going to lose our starting strong safety. Will Harris is going to have to start there. He's going to have to be used incorrectly once again. He's going to have to be more of that deep safety, which we know he's not great at. And our defense is going to be bad again. Our secondary is going to be bad again because they're going to be picking on the safeties because, no offense to Duron Harmon, he's not the fastest or biggest guy. And then Will Harris, he's more of a box safety, not a deep safety. And if we're playing him at deep safety, they're going to pick on him because that's just not what he's good at. So if Tracy Walker gets hurt, we're going to see a very similar drop-off to when we traded Quandre Diggs. And I truly think that Quandre Diggs trade was the biggest part of this Detroit Lions downfall last year. As soon as we traded Quandre Diggs, as soon as we lost that presence, the defense just started playing really, really bad. And not to mention, Tracy Walker is the oldest Lion on this roster, or the most experienced Lion. He's been with the Detroit Lions for the longest amount of time out of anybody in the secondary. And he's only going into his 3rd year. Duron Harmon's going into his 1st year here. Jeff Okuda's going into his 1st year here. Desmond Trufant's going into his 1st year. Coleman and Oruwariye are going into their 2nd years here. The secondary they haven't been here for a long time, and Tracy Walker right now has the most experience as a Detroit Lion, so I think that could also be a big help. And if we lose that guy in the backfield, our secondary is going to take a huge hit. And then the last guy is Trey Flowers. Now, our pass rush wasn't very good last year, even with a monster in Trey Flowers. Now, Trey Flowers did not start the season healthy, but once he got healthy, he was playing like one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL. He got 7 sacks last season, which led the team. And if we lose him, we're not going to have any pass rush next year. Hopefully Romeo Okwara can get back to that 2018 version of himself, but that's not a guarantee. He's never had a season like that before 2018, so we don't know if he's ever going to get back to that. And if we lose Trey Flowers, who is going to be our main pass rusher? Who's going to be the guy that teams have to scheme around? Who's going to be the guy that gets all the attention and takes away blockers from the younger guys, the Julian Okwaras, the Romeo Okwaras? Who's going to take away their blockers if Trey Flowers isn't playing? If Trey Flowers isn't over on that, on the other opposing edge, rushing the passer and, really making the quarterback fear him, who's going to be that great passer that's going to get us sacks and going to get us pressures and going to force mistakes and turnovers for this defense? Nobody. We don't have another great pass rusher on the defensive line, so if we lose Trey Flowers, I hate to say it, our pass rush might be worse than last year, and our pass rush last year was bottom 3 in the NFL. So those are the 5 players I don't think the Detroit Lions can afford to lose. Now, I do think Matthew Stafford and Frank Ragnow are the most important. I think Danny Shelton is probably the most important on defense. I think Trey Flowers is the second. I think Tracy Walker, while being the 5th most important player, is still important because he's the veteran safety there now. He's been in the Detroit Lions system the longest, and he knows the playbook and the plays and the play style better than anybody on the secondary. So if we lose him, our secondary is going to drop just as bad as when we lost Quandre Diggs. So, but with that being said, that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Who do you guys think is the most important player to retain for the Detroit Lions? What players can the Detroit Lions not afford to have opt out for the 2020 season? Did I miss anybody, or do you think anybody on this list we could lose and still be okay? Let me know that down in the comments below. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. As I said at the beginning, make sure you go down and sub to this channel and like if you did enjoy the video and are new. I'd be very, very appreciative. And while you're at it, go over to my second channel, as we're going to be starting, more Detroit Lions highlights over there. We're probably going to start with some Matthew Stafford, some Kerryon Johnson, some Kenny Galladay stuff, and get hyped for this Detroit Lions season whenever it comes around. But with that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. There is Lions news before tomorrow. I'll obviously make a video letting everybody know. But until then, that's all I got for you guys right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. With that being said, that's all I got. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.